a time when women who went to work simply handed their salaries over to their husbands or in-laws and they submitted themselves to the rules of the household even if they resented it. But times have changed and rightly so now have his money, her money and our money as a rule in many households. But there are still several areas of concern about household finance that require partners to set aside their differences and work together as a team. And so, on the Money Show today, we will analyze how spouses can make joint family decisions. Let's welcome on board Bharat Phatak, Director, Scripbox. Bharat, good evening and welcome to the Money Show. And let's explore the chemistry of finance between partners. And before we get into the details and the nitty-gritties of it, I want to understand how important it is for partners to talk about their money, which includes just not their earning, but also their spending habits, their savings, their financial goals. How should a money talk between partners look like?
You're absolutely right. Traditionally, it has been there has been an aversion to talk about money, especially in the joint family culture. One patriarch would take most of the decisions, and none of the family members would know about it. But we find that things are definitely changing. What has happened is many women are pursuing a career. They are having financial independence. And obviously, when we are looking at a double income family, many of the expenses, many of the investments are made jointly. Many of the life goals are made looked at in a joint fashion. And at Scripbox, we conducted a survey among our investors. And what we found is that investors or people below the age of 35 are much more comfortable in discussing finances internally. So 47% of the respondents said that they openly discuss finances, whereas for people above the age of 35, this number was 35%. Also, 60% of the respondents told us that joint plans give them a better understanding of their finances and their obligations. And 58% also said that it increases their ability to meet the goals. So I think definitely as the independence is coming in, as we move from joint family to a nuclear family, and also much smaller families now, both spouses earning, it is changing. And this is a very welcome change that we find it is important to look at finances jointly. In many cases, earlier what used to happen is most of the decisions were taken by the male member, and the lady would not know what kind of transactions are there.
Bharat, the kind of phenomena and the change you're talking about, I mean, you said around 35 and below. So we are talking about millennials over here. Also, one thing, is this a very urban phenomena? Because in tier 2 and tier 3 towns, I mean, even if women are working, but then they are still apprehensive about talking about their finances and the main decision maker is still a male in the family.
Most likely, I mean, I would not have a split on that, but more likely in urban families, this trend is very visible.
Exactly. So further going on this note itself, if one wants to sit down and talk about their finances, what should be the structure of this conversation? Because that's very important. Money is a topic, finance is a topic where people can have their own fears, their own apprehensions, even ego for that matter. Okay, so how should you go on with this conversation? How should you begin this conversation? Because here we are talking about a couple who will not only have joint financial goals, but also a family, that they will have to bring up together. So what should be the structure of this conversation?
So currently we find that most people are comfortable talking about their monthly budgets, talking about some of the major purchases like automobile or white goods which they purchase. These things are discussed jointly. Obviously, buying a house, and we increasingly see a trend where younger and younger people are buying houses. So earlier, the average age at which the first house purchase would be made was 45. Today, it is 31. So definitely, that house purchase becomes a very important decision because it involves mortgaging the house, it involves paying EMIs, and these decisions, or taking an auto loan, these decisions are discussed quite commonly. But what I feel is it is equally important to look at the long-term goals, and I think still to reach there, many families may not be openly discussing the long-term goals because we are too focused on the short term. So meeting the monthly budget, meeting the EMI, these are important. But the other fallout of nuclear families is that we will have to make provision for our own retirement. At the same time, possibly the millennials will have an additional obligations of looking after their parents. So I think long-term goals we need to discuss. Also, I think the insurance which is required, in which I'll say term insurance, especially to balance your mortgage liabilities or auto loan liability on one hand.
So, Bharat, when you talk about discussing your budget, you talk about discussing the loan burden, you talk about discussing your financial goals, you talk about discussing your insurance. What all gets into this discussion? Do you tell a person, for example, if someone wants to take a car loan, so maybe the husband will be taking the loan and the wife will be taking care of household expenses. What is the format? I mean, obviously, we cannot stick to a particular format because, couple have their own way of figuring out their finances. But then what should be done? How should we divide all these responsibility? Because most of these people, they have, everyone has a house budget that they need to stick to. People have loans on them. People do have financial goals, especially if they have kids. Insurance is something that you cannot ignore. So all of these things are an important part of your financial planning as a couple.
Yeah. So I think the starting point there is to create a family kitty of sorts, where for the regular expenses, both spouses contribute. And in my way of thinking, this has become more important now that for most of the expenses, we are using the digital payments or the UPI type of payments. So there are a large number of payments that you make, and you will find it much easier to create a separate account for that, so that your other accounts are not, vulnerable to hacking or something like that. So that is one part. And creating or contributing for common expenses becomes a starting point. Having an emergency fund in a common account is also a starting point. And after that, one will start looking at the financial goals. Another important issue is, if both partners are having independent income, they should also have independent assets. And that independence can become very complicated if everything is taken on jointly. So the methodology that typically is followed is, for ease of operation, assets will be held in joint names, but the first name holder will be the person who will be contributing, and second name is added for joint operation. So I think the different goals, there will be some family goals and there can be some individual or independent goals also. So children's education or retirement, both I will look at them as family goals, and start providing for those. At least have a vision about up to what age you would want to be gainfully employed, or at what age you would like to have a freedom to retire. Because in today's careers, we understand that you will not easily retire, but you will be in a position to choose the work. So I think in many cases, the ladies may want to retire a little early. That is one of the things which I find that even the kids want the mom to come home. And so if she can retire at a little earlier age, and the husband can continue to work for a longer period, So these are some of the things which.
So Bharat, this is still a scenario where both the partners are working. Not a scenario where we have a homemaker and there's
Yes.
only one source of income coming. How should we do the finance talk or money talk?
Yeah. So there again, I think it is important to have start with insurance, because health insurance, accident insurance, and term insurance are the three pillars on which any unforeseen circumstances can be handled, and the nomination process there should be very clear. It is also important that if a house purchase is done, both the spouses' names should be there, whether it is a cooperative society on the share certificate, whether it's an apartment in the registry. These names should be there. And most of the investments should be reviewed jointly at least once in a quarter, I think, because many times consciously or unconsciously, ladies tend to say that this is not my job, and they'll say let the husband make the decisions, which is okay, but knowing why those decisions are made and what needs to be done in case he's unable to make those decisions, I think that is where the communication is the starting point. Communication becomes very important there. And creating these joint accounts, creating these joint names, in my way of thinking, is an important step.
Right. I think we've covered almost all the aspects of how spouses can talk about their financial planning and together walk on the path of financial freedom. Thank you so much, Bharat, for being on the show and helping us with that today. On that note, let's take a quick break, and post that, let's talk about RBI's campaign to settle unclaimed deposits after this break.